Okay, hi guys, welcome to our video podcast. I just want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. Thanks very much for coming on here. So, Phil, let's start with you. Tell me a little bit about your background and what you're doing now.
So I spent 25 years in the military, which I just finished my military career in September 2023. And upon exiting the military, I had to obviously do the old thing where you decide what you're going to do to carry on in the future. So I decided to open my own chocolate business. So I am the owner and founder of the Chocolate Soldier.
Amazing. So, is that something that you've done before? What was your background in the military?
So I was a chef by trade in the military. I had always had an interest in chocolate. However, I didn't do a lot with that while I was in the military. So I dabbled in some little things for dinner nights and stuff. But actually, if you saw some of the stuff I did for messing around with chocolate for the dinner nights, you would be like, yeah, that guy's not going to have a career in chocolate work. But about 5 years before the end of my career, I decided actually I quite would like to learn a bit more about chocolate work before I leave the forces, and it's always a good tool to utilize some of the resources within the army. So I started making chocolates about 5 years before I left the army. 95% was self-taught before then getting on some courses and going on resettlement, putting my whole resettlement into chocolate then afterwards. Yeah.
Amazing. And so, what's the connection between the two? How do you know each other, and what's your involvement with this, Des?
So that's a brilliant question. So I very briefly introduce myself. So I'm Des. I spent 27 years in the army, bizarrely in the same corps, the Royal Logistic Corps, as Phil, but neither of us ever served together. And we met each other on a resettlement course in Aldershot. Just complete chance that we sat next to each other in the room, and a lot of the other people were sat around giving this is what I think my business pitch should be, and this is what I want to do. I had already decided that I was going to do independent consultancy and had already established my business. And Phil very passionately turned around and said, I'm going to make chocolate, which clearly grabbed everyone's attention. And at the end of the 2-day course that we spent together, my brother works in hospitality in London, and I offered Phil both some of my time as an independent consultant to give him a bit of help with strategy and his business planning, but also access to my brother if he needed any kind of support from the hospitality trade, which hasn't actually turned out to be that fruitful, although we have done some marketing through my brother. And I then gave Phil a day of my time to kind of help him work out what the strategy might look like. And at the end of that day, and he turned around and said, I kind of want to just make chocolate. Will you come on board and give me a hand with all that? And thus the relationship started and continues now really well.
Amazing. So, was that last year that happened, and you started up last year?
No, the year before.
Okay.
It was
Amazing.
about this time 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So what was that? It was late February 22.
Amazing. And so both of you, what were your highlights of your military careers? I'll start with you, Phil. What did you really love about it? What are your most memorable things about that you did when you were in the army?
Yeah, I think for me, joining Free Commando and passing my commando course and everything else was quite a big thing for me. I loved that one. I got there, really loved the unit, got on and went and did my commando course, and then spent 16 years in Free Commando. So, I spent a lot of time going to some really, really great places, doing some really great things. Even though I was a chef by trade, actually, being in that world and that environment, I got to do a lot of the other things that I wouldn't do really as a chef. And I think it's always fab because a lot of chefs always get a lot of chance to integrate into the units, and I was lucky in Free Commando, so doing a lot of the stuff in Free Commando, a lot of the places I went to was just amazing. I was at the weekend. We had some old photo albums out, and my boys were looking through the photos, and there's me there doing demolitions and ice breaking drills and all the other sorts of things that go along that soldiering path as well. And they absolutely loved it, and it was just so nice to show them all of that. So I think for me, the highlights would be the things I've probably done in my career that I would never ever have done in my life had I not have been in the forces. So yeah.
Amazing. What about you, Des?
Whilst Phil was talking, I was contemplating that as what my answer might be. I think that's really quite difficult to say on the basis that I had such a varied career, whether that was doing aerial delivery out of the back of a Hercules, doing bomb disposal and various bomb disposal tasks across the United Kingdom and in Macedonia, or commanding at regimental level, or being at the heart of the kind of operational decision making in the permanent joint headquarters. And I think it was probably the opportunity to go to a number of places in East Africa and to teach them how they might be able to do things better in their response to Somalia as an issue, and that gave me a lot of pleasure, and certainly my experience of Rwanda was it was amazing. I like most people probably think Rwanda and think about the problems that they had in 1994, and think that it's a really backward country. It's not. It's beautiful. Not only is the physical countryside beautiful, but the people are amazing, and very friendly, and exceedingly hospitable. And I had my mind changed very, very quickly about Rwanda as a country and a nation.
Amazing. So obviously there's come a time in your careers where you've decided that done my time doing this and I'm going to move on. So Des, what was it for you that made you change from I love my career to I need to go and do something different? Was it a need, or was it a sort of natural progression? How did that all work for you?
So I think I was lucky enough that I had the freedom to choose at the point at which I resigned. I resigned partly in protest over Afghanistan. I had spent probably about 2.5 years of my military career in Afghanistan, and a further couple of years working in the permanent joint headquarters directly in support of Afghanistan, and the efforts that happened over there. And at the time when op pitting happened, which I think was a fantastic tactical success,
Yeah.
I found that it was difficult for me to reconcile the politics and strategy involved with the losses that had happened in Afghanistan over the 20 odd years that British forces had been there.
So just for those who might not understand what op pitting was, could you just explain just briefly what that was?
So op pitting was the evacuation operation that happened in 2020, August 2021, out of Kabul, a place where I had served directly in Kabul in the British Embassy for about 7 months. So I was aware of the type of people that were being either given access to refuge or not. And interestingly, at the time, I was working in the Defence Academy, and must have been about 5 weeks prior to the operation starting, we had a number of Afghan students on the course that I was working with, and they were not given immediate refuge on those evacuation flights, which it irked me quite considerably. And I found myself considering what the next step should be, and whether or not I could reconcile the politics of it.
Yeah.
I got to the point of saying, no, I can't. And I think because I had because I knew that I would be immediately pensionable, and I was already set up in our own house, my family was stable. It allowed me to make a very difficult choice easily.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that must have been a pretty tough one, especially if you've had such a long career. I mean, between you, you've had a lot of years of service, haven't you? So Phil, about you, what was yours a natural progression to leave the service? Did you have an exit point coming up, or how did
Yeah,
that work for you?
like unlike Des, I didn't really have the luxury of having time to spare anymore. So I basically timed out. I came to the end of my time, and I'd actually done over and above my original time. So I was always going to do 22. Well, I'd say I was always going to do 22 years. If you'd have asked me at 15-year point, I was probably ready to go then. But kind of life and everything else, I kind of stayed a bit, and then it hit a point where there was no point to leave. And to be quite honest, I didn't always really know exactly what I wanted to do. So I was always going to leave at my 22-year point, which happened to fall slap bang in the middle of COVID. So, you know, one look at that said to me, there's no point trying to leave and set up a business during this time. So I stayed for my extra 2 years then on top of that, and plus a bit from before. So yeah, so I ended up just staying on, and I naturally timed out, really. It was the end of my time. And I guess I could have looked into some of the opportunities that are there. I can't remember what they call it, but it's like the senior soldier continuity plan, actually. So I could have looked at some of those things, but I naturally had hit a point where I needed to personally move on and leave that life behind and go and do something a bit different. Yeah.
Can I dig into that a little bit? And so what was the need there to go and do something completely different? Because I was going to ask the question about, you know, why not naturally go into a lot of us military people, we naturally progress to perhaps project management, consultancy, and I know Des is doing some of that as well. You know, for me as a nurse, then it would make sense for me to go and work as a management role in the NHS, but I chose not to do that. So for you, what was the thing that sort of drove you to go, I'm going to do something completely different, and this is not anything to do with what I've done before?
Do you know what? I think it was the aspect of I realised, especially once I got into more and more management in the army, that's not me. I didn't mind managing people and being a sergeant and all of that. That's where it sort of started. And, you know, I don't mind managing people, and I didn't mind a lot of the management side of things. But especially in the catering world, it all became contract management and assurance, and you're assuring a contractor. And a lot of my friends have actually then gone into facilities management from that, because that's what we're kind of doing, really. But I realized after a point, I really didn't like it. Sitting behind a computer or assuring a contract or managing a contract or all of that facilities management stuff, I found it quite dull and quite boring. And I hit a point, I used to go into work and I'd be like, oh, not this again. Like, and people just wanting from you all the time. And I suddenly hit a point where I was like, I want to do my own thing, where I don't have anyone to answer to, not really. And where actually I realised that I'm a very much a hands-on person. So when I came up and I was a younger lad and I was catering all the time and I was out doing the demolitions and I was off doing the exercises and all that, I really enjoyed all of that parts of the army. But when it hit the you know, being constantly behind a desk, answering emails, going down facilities management and all of that sort of stuff, I found it a bit dull and it just didn't inspire me. So I knew I needed a job that I enjoyed, that was hands-on. And actually very much in the last year of my military career, I started doing some catering work on the catering circuit, they call it, with some of the other companies. So I worked at race courses and Wimbledon and places like that. And I found myself working in the Princess Royal boxes at Cheltenham, thinking, hang on, what am I doing here? There's been a mistake. But I absolutely loved it. Long hours, long work, but it was just enjoyable. And I think I'd lost the enjoyment in the army by the time it was just facilities management, and that it just wasn't for me anymore.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that, actually, because again, you know, I joined to look after patients. I joined because I wanted that people contact, and then I found myself again doing governance assurance, which was interesting, but not well. And the times when I did go and look after patients, it just reminded me, this is what I love doing, and this is what I'm not doing anymore. And so for me, that was a big sort of turning point for me, is I need to go and do something totally different. What would you say to somebody, this is to either of you, what would you say to somebody who is in that situation, who's perhaps had a long career and they're perhaps sat behind a desk not loving what they're doing? What would your advice be to them right now?
I think for me, it would be, do you know what? Just go and do it. Find the thing that is your passion, that you want to do. And if you can envisage a market or a business in that area that you can achieve, give it a shot, because why not?
Yeah. How about you, Des?
Yeah, I'd echo exactly what Phil's just said, which is, yes, there's an element of risk, but once you've found the thing, whatever that thing is in your life, which is the kind of the North Star, which is your passion, being able to turn your passion and your own personal energy into a business idea. There are lots of people out there that can help you achieve that.
Yeah.
But the one thing that all of those people don't have is your passion for that one thing. So consolidate all of your thinking and everything around that one thing, which is a passion. And that's part of the reason why I offered to help Phil, was because of the passion that he effused about chocolate, and everything to do with it, and what he wanted to do, and where he wanted to take his business, and what he wanted it to do, was it's as well as the fact that his chocolates taste lovely, but his chocolates taste lovely because of the passion that he puts into them. So once you found your passion, and as much as, yes, there's some risk involved in doing it, take the leap of faith, jump in. Don't put your toe in the water, just jump in, because it kind of makes you have to make it work. Whereas if you've got your toe in the water, you're not fully invested, then the likelihood is it probably won't work. A wise man very long time ago said, "Is the grass greener on the other side?" And his answer was, "No, the grass is greener wherever you tend to it." So as long as you put time and effort into it, the grass will grow.
I love that. That's amazing. Okay, so let's look at your actual business side of things itself. What were you not prepared for when you started out doing this together?
Good question. Probably most of it, to be honest.
That's a common theme, you know, common answer.
No, for me, there's probably quite a few things I wasn't quite prepared for. I know that, you know, business-minded wise, I've never had to be a businessman. I've never had to look into running my own business. So, you know, I think for me, the aspect of making chocolates, I love it. And, you know, I can spend all day in my chocolate room here and make all sorts of wonderful chocolates. But it's the other side of running a business that matters. That actually, it's not just making chocolates, it's responding to customers, it's looking into new products, development, you know, finding new equipment, answering emails. I tell you, actually, what I really wasn't prepared for was the fact that I work 5 times as hard now as I ever did in the army. I wasn't prepared for.
How about you, Des? You got anything to add to that?
I think the complexities of running your own website,
Mm.
all of the kind of the technical jargon involved in and around making it run and operate, and designing it in the first place, and all of the rest of the stuff that goes around that, whether that's product development, um, food labeling regulations, um, intellectual property ownership, which is one that Phil and I, mainly me, fell foul of, but it's actually turned out to be a bit of a silver lining. Uh, all of those things, you don't necessarily think, oh, we're going to create a chocolate company. We'll have to do all of those things as well, and we'll have to have some expertise in that, which is really quite difficult to do when there's two of you.
Yeah.
Assisted and abetted by Phil's wife, but so even then, that's kind of two and a half of us, because Phil's wife works. So you get to the point of going, well, that's kind of two and a half people. One of them's taken up completely with the manufacture of chocolate, and I say that because I am, and hands up, absolutely rubbish in a kitchen. That's why he does that side of it.
Yeah.
And I try and help out on all of the rest of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all of the rest of it
All
in
of the rest of it. I mean, it could sound, for somebody who's listening to this, and I totally relate to all of this, because things like the word SEO, I didn't even know what that was. I had to look it up when I was talking to my web designer. Thought I probably should know this, but it does sound quite overwhelming. So if somebody was wanting to start, where would they even begin? If they were looking at this and going, do you know what, that's inspired me, I want to go out and start my own business, go and do something totally different, where would you even start with it?
So I would say, if they've got a military background,
Yeah.
and they're leaving the forces for whatever their reasons might be, there are so many different people that want to help you, and we certainly have had help from ex-forces enterprise, or ex-FE as they're sometimes called, who offer both training courses, insight courses, and the opportunity for kind of longer term mentorship from a business leader, all the way through to heropreneurs, who we have a mentor through heropreneurs, and they are, quite frankly, again, amazing. Both of these organizations are amazing, and they really do want ex-forces people to succeed in their business venture, whether that's a small business like ours, or something that's, has the potential or desire to grow into a medium or even a large scale enterprise over a period of time. And those organizations are there specifically to help, whether that's help with gaining some seed funding or startup funding, or whether that's just help, guidance and advice on VAT registration, or what SEO means,
SEO. Yeah, exactly.
or what DMARC means. That's one which we've had to contend with,
Right.
which again, like you, I had to look up, and in all of this, YouTube is your friend.
Yeah,
there's
that's
a lot
true.
of content out there which other people have put up on YouTube that help in those aspects of the business which aren't unique. So the unique part of Phil's business, because it is Phil's business, is the chocolate,
Yeah.
and Phil's ability to create flavors which are exquisite. That's the unique part. All of the rest of it is just business management. So you can find out so much about the business management side of it from other people. What you can't do is find out what's going on in Phil's head when he goes, I'm going to combine this flavor with this flavor, and it's going to be delicious. That's the one thing which is unique about the business. So we'll come back to, once you found your passion, you found that thing which is unique, keep hold of that, and then get advice and help and guidance on all of the other stuff that you just need in the background, arguably, which are the kind of the foundations and the niff-naff and trivia that allow your one central idea to propagate and grow.
So just thinking about from your last sort of couple of years in your military careers to where you are now, and I'm asking really about well-being, how, and also bearing in mind that you're working potentially a lot harder because it's your business. How would you say life has changed? Has life improved? Do you have a better feeling of well-being? How would you describe it? Phil, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think for me, definitely. I've started this. I didn't start it, but I've been invited to go along to a peer-to-peer business group, which is 6 local businesses, and we all kind of get together once a week and just gel and chat about stuff to do with business. And one of the people on it said, "Do you know what? As much as running my own business and everything else scares me, and it's busy and it's this and that's the other, I go out my driveway and I decide if I'm turning left or right." And for me, that was just the thing where, yes, I get busy, and yes, it's full on, and yes, there's a lot to do, and it can feel pressurized. But actually, if I decided I've had enough of it today, I'm going to close the chocolate shop, I'm going to go up there, I'm going to go and pick my kids up from school, I'm going to take them to the park, and then we're going to go and get takeaway for dinner, and then we're just going to do our family night for the night, and I'll think about that all again tomorrow. There's nobody who's going to tell me I can't. Yes, it can be a bit stressful, it can be hard, but actually, ultimately, I'm in charge of doing what I want to do and in charge of my own destiny, if you like. So, yeah, I want to take this business high places and, you know, really get it motoring along. But some of those days, you've got the ability to just say, it's all about me for 5 minutes. So if I know it's, you know, hit that point where I need a bit of fill time, then I'll take a bit of fill time. And for instance, half term, you know, the amount of times in the military I was not there for half term or days off or holidays or all the other stuff that you got sent away for, or you just couldn't go home at the weekend. Now I turned around and I said, Des, you better tell people, as of Wednesday, I'm going to Devon, me, the wife and the kids. We're going all going to Devon. We're spending 4 days in Devon with family down there and doing our thing. And everybody else will just have to wait. And that's exactly what we did. And do you know what? Actually, that 4-day break has just really almost reset me. So I think now, yes, there's all that hard times and pressures, but you're your own boss. And you know, I think for me, my family wellness is shot up here because I've now got my own business, and there's no one dictating to me that I cannot go home on a certain weekend just because. And but my 2 boys, being 8 and 6, the world of difference it's made to them and how they feel and their well-being is amazing. They used to absolutely hate it. Every time I said I was going, how long are you going for? When are you going to be back? Will you be back? How long is it going to be? When will we see you? I'm here. I wake up in the morning and I'm here. I can help to sort of, and for my wife as well, because, you know, the amount of times she's done it all. She's been there. She's taken them to school. She's getting up in the morning. She's getting them ready for school. She's having that stress out. Now, if there's a morning where it's a little bit stressy, I just stop work and step in for half an hour. I get them sorted out for school, which allows her to get ready for work. She goes to work in feeling in a much better place because she hadn't had to get stressy with the boys or anything like that. Because, you know, I'll get them to get their shoes on, Lucy. I'll get them to do this, and you just go and do you. And I think for all of us, it's actually made it, you know, a lot better.
Des, I think we're a bit short of time for you. You need to go, don't you? But is there anything you want to add quickly, and then Phil and I can wrap up?
I'd echo Phil's ownership of your own time, notwithstanding that I need to disappear to a work meeting, but ownership of your own time and that ability to say yes or no. Am I turning left or am I turning right? And essentially do what you want within the constraints that only you've imposed on yourself. The The difference I would say is that I live in a house with 2 daughters and a wife, which means I never get the opportunity to choose. I just get told what to do.
Brilliant. Well, Des, I know you need to go, but I really appreciate your time. Phil and I will carry on chatting if it's all right for a few more minutes.
Yeah.
But let you get away to your meeting. Thanks very much for your time. Okay, let's carry on with what we were talking about. So just wanted to wrap up, Phil, and just ask you, who is your perfect client and how would they get hold of you? How would they find out about your products, about your chocolates? So that please just share a little bit about that. So,
you know, a returning customer is a perfect client because, you know, they're showing me that they like the service, that they like the product and all the rest of it. But the aspect of having regular supplies to certain places. So I don't think there's really a perfect client. I do like the big corporate orders that we get in sometimes. So they are fab. And there's been a couple of companies that we've worked closely with have had some really big corporate orders where we've designed the boxes and done everything for them for their company. And you know, we've had a couple of those like that have returned a few times over, and that's for me is, yes, it's a big lot of work, but actually it's fab because I can say, wow, I've got this £700-800 order for chocolates coming in, which really blows me away. One perfect client is the military. So, you know, supplying chocolates to military dinner nights and all the rest of it, they're a really good thing for me. And if I could, I'd love to be supplying almost every military dinner night with chocolates. Really.
So what's unique about your chocolate then compared to sort of, I could go to my local supermarket and buy, you know, various chocolates off the shelf. What is unique about yours, and why would a customer want yours versus something you would buy in a supermarket?
Because everything is individually handmade by me. I've made it, I've designed it, I've chosen it. I've spent hours and hours tasting them, as you can probably start to tell. You know.
That's a perk of the job, I think, though.
But I guess it's because I put time, effort, and passion into every single chocolate. My raspberry and vanilla, for example, was born because I was sat in my office at the Defence Academy, bored one day, not wanting to do much facilities management. And there was an RAF girl sat in the office, driver. And I looked at her and said, right, Ellie, come on, let's brainstorm. What would be your favourite chocolate? And she's like, I quite like this and I quite like that. And we went through loads and we're like, oh, she was like, I quite like raspberry. And then she's like, oh, I quite like vanilla. And I was like, well, why don't we make a raspberry and vanilla? And then I start thinking and I'm like, right, well, how would that go well together? A raspberry ganache and a vanilla ganache wouldn't sit so well in the chocolate. So I'm like, why don't we make a raspberry caramel and a vanilla ganache? And then it's
nice.
How will we design it? Well, how should the chocolate look on the outside? And that chocolate basically got developed sitting in my office, just really sitting down and chatting and thinking about it. And so now it's it's like a red and a white chocolate dome with a milk chocolate shell, a raspberry caramel in the top, and a vanilla ganache underneath.
If somebody wanted to buy some chocolates or get in touch with you with some ideas about, you know, a bespoke chocolate, how would they get in touch with you? Have you got a website?
Yeah, so the easiest way to get in touch with us would be through our website. So it's www.thechocolatesoldier.co.uk. Everything we do is on the website, so you can just order direct from the website. Or if you had a request for something bespoke, for a centerpiece, for example, or something like that, then we've got an info@email on there. So you can just drop us an email straight on there.
Phil, thank you ever so much for your time, and to Des as well for sharing your story and sharing your highs and lows of the business. It sounds like you're doing really well, and I would just wish you all the best for your future.